Hi and welcome back to my channel. I just wanted to do a quick video. I was actually getting ready for work today, not fully ready, and I was thinking about a session that I'm going to have and how I was going to present the fair fighting rules. And this can look different for different people, different therapists, different couples, but I thought I would just share my version of it. And this way, maybe if you're in a relationship and you're finding yourself getting into a lot of arguments and it kind of goes below the belt and it's a little messy and all over the place, this can kind of give you some guidance as to how do we fix it, because it's normal for couples to have disagreements, right? Like, you have two people that are coming together, but you had your own backgrounds and your own life and your own perspective and different cultures and like all these different things that go into play when you're arguing or when you're living life. So you're going to have disagreements. It's not that you're not supposed to have disagreements as a couple, is that you're supposed to be able to respectfully have a disagreement and come up with resolutions and way to respect each other. So if you're going to do couples therapy, or if you're going to do, I like to do this with family therapy because I don't really do couples therapy, but even in my own personal life, things like this, it's called the fair fighting rules. And the first thing that you want to do is figure out, why are you mad? What is the actual real underlying situation? Because sometimes somebody can come in like, oh, well, I'm upset because they did X, Y, and Z yesterday, and they focus on just yesterday. And it's like, you could talk about whatever happened yesterday all you want, but there's still anger there. Why is there still anger there? Well, because there's something deeper under it. So like, maybe it's that this continues to happen and it gets addressed and nothing ever changes. So now you feel defeated, or you feel like this other person doesn't hear you, which then turns into they don't care enough about me. So it's not the actual thing that happened yesterday, like not pulling the car into the garage and just leaving it in the driveway and now you blocked somebody. That seems like that's what you're angry about, but that's not actually what you're angry about. You're angry about, I've told you a billion times to put the car in the garage, not in the driveway, and you don't listen, and I feel unheard. And feeling unheard is not a good feeling. So that's just a random example. I don't even know where that came from, because I have arguments in my relationship, but that's not one of them. Just the first thing that came to mind. But you get the point that sometimes there's this topic of something that happened, but there's so much more lying under it. So that's that. So basically, think about why you're mad, and don't pre-think about the argument, but just know your reasons. So when you go to explain them, you're not all over the place. You could say, I feel this way when da 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 da, right? The next thing is, we have to talk about one thing at a time. Have you ever been in an argument where it's like, it starts off as, you didn't pull the car into the garage, and then before you know it, you're arguing because that person also never leaves the keys on the hook in the kitchen, and by the way, you also didn't clean the pot you were supposed to clean, and it like turns into this whole thing of all these different reasons why you didn't do the things that you were supposed to, or why this person is angry. And what happens is you pile up all of these things, and then what are they supposed to do when they respond? If you're just like throwing things at them and you're going from here to there to there to there, they're not going to be able to address all of it. It's a messy conversation. It's not going to come up with a solution. It's just going to turn into defense of like, well, you did this and you did that, and why is it a big deal that I left the pot in the kitchen in the sink? Like I said, I was going to clean it, and I will. You're impatient. And it doesn't help the situation when we're just layering things on top of things on top of things. We have to talk about the underlying issue. So if the underlying issue is feeling unheard, stick to feeling unheard. One topic at a time. If there are multiple things that need to be talked about, because sometimes there are, that's fine, but one at a time, and allow your partner to respond back to you. So if I say I feel unheard, let's talk about the reasons why I feel unheard. Let's talk about why that hurts my feelings. They can respond back, oh, I didn't know that you felt this way, or I didn't know that it was impacting you that way, or I will start working on this, or whatever. Okay, that's addressed. Now we can move on to the next thing, which is, I also feel, I don't know, whatever else you feel. It's much easier to resolve an issue if you just focus on one than throwing a bunch of stuff at people, because they get overwhelmed and the conversation goes nowhere. All right, the third thing is, no disrespectful, degrading, mean language. And that can be very hard, because when I get upset, sometimes I'm like, you're an a-hole and you're annoying me, and that's what I want to say. But how is calling somebody another name, how is it going to help the situation? Like, am I going to feel good if somebody comes at me and says, you're a B word? Like, probably not. It's not going to make me want to listen to them. It's definitely not going to make me want to come up with a resolution. I'm just going to probably turn into the B word and tell you off because you're calling me that. So what's important is to remember that if the true point of having the conversation is to come up with a resolution and stop feeling the way you're feeling, then we both have to be disrespectful. We both have to be respectful. You can't sit here and degrade the other person. It's just going to make them offended, defensive, and like, it's not really the mindset or attitude of somebody who wants to make changes. Okay. The next one is a method, I think it's called stonewalling, but I actually don't know if that's the correct word. But basically this idea of like, once you're in an argument and you just don't want to deal with it anymore, you totally shut off, you retreat to yourself, you go inward, and you like block that person out. So now there was an argument and now you just totally retreated and want nothing to do with it. That person gets aggravated. Like, how are you just going to stop talking? Then they're chasing you around. You're getting more overwhelmed. You want to stop talking even more. Like, all of these things go into play. And again, what is the purpose of the conversation? If the purpose of the conversation is to come up with a resolution, you're not going to come up with a resolution if one person's talking and the other person isn't. That person might come up with a resolution, but that doesn't mean that the both of you are in agreement with it. And so if you don't express how you're feeling, nothing could be addressed. If you don't help come up with a resolution, nothing's going to be fixed. So I understand that sometimes checking out feels good, because if we're overwhelmed, we just don't want to deal with it. Or if you're just so angry that you're like, whatever, F this, I don't want to deal with it anymore. Those moments are real. I'm not saying ignore them. I'm saying if you need to take a break, take a break. You know what? This conversation is just really stressing me out. I feel like I'm about ready to call you a whole bunch of other words that I don't want to start calling you. Instead of me totally retreating and just cutting you off and acting like this conversation isn't happening and you aren't in the same house as me, I'm just going to take a break. Give me like 10 minutes. I'm going to go step outside and like let me just chill. It doesn't have to be 10 minutes, but the whole point is take a break if you really need the break, but you can't shut down on people, because when you shut down, there's nothing there to work with. I think it goes without saying, oh wow, we're a little bit of a mess today. I think it goes without saying that you shouldn't yell, but just a friendly reminder, don't yell and scream at people. When you escalate your voice and raise it, they are going to escalate their voice and raise it. And so you're going to have a screaming match. Screaming matches don't get anybody anywhere. So my best advice would be, if you can tell your partner is getting louder, go a little bit lower. That might frustrate them, but usually what ends up happening is the other person has to lower themselves down because they can't hear you. If I'm screaming and you're like, all right, like I'm going to stay just like this and I want to stay calm, that person is going to need to calm themselves down. You're not going to get anywhere by trying to fight like who's going to be louder than the other. And now you've lost sight of the whole conversation. Like, what are you arguing about? Are you trying to win a screaming match, or are you trying to come up with a resolution to better your relationship? So, like I said, I know we all know this, but just be mindful of it. And then I would say the last thing is to come to a compromise if possible. If you can't fully agree, like ideally we want to be able to agree, but we're not always going to be able to agree. Like I said, we have different perspectives, different lifestyles, different cultures, different things that we believe. So you're not always going to come to an agreement. If you can't come to agreement, you're at a place where it's like we're running in circles. I don't want to keep repeating myself. You feel how you feel. I feel how I feel. Try to have a compromise, because if you just leave it alone, like you feel how you feel and I feel how I feel and it is what it is, that's not really going to help, because it's going to end up coming up again and then you guys are on different sides. So if you can come up with a compromise of like, if you forget to put your car in the garage, I am calmly going to remind you. I'm not going to yell and scream at you, and you're not going to give me a hard time about it. You're just going to say, oh yeah, I forgot, and go and put it in the garage. Or if it's a bigger deal, like, oh, I hate that you watch sports every day when you come home from work, and I feel like there should be more quality time, and it should be sitting down having dinner together as a family or couple or whatever, and instead it feels like you come home and go straight to the TV and eat your dinner in front of the TV. then in that situation, it's like, can we come up with a compromise? You love sports. So if your favorite team is playing, maybe on that day you just come home and watch TV while eating dinner. But if it's not your favorite team, you're going to come have dinner with us. Or, I don't know, there's a whole bunch of ways to make compromises. The first half, you're going to sit down and watch it with us, and then the second half, you can go and watch the game. It depends on the situation, right? Like, some are more extreme than others. There's different viewpoints. So somebody might be like, what are you talking about? Games don't come before marriage at all. I don't care if it's your team or not. You're not going to sit down in front of the TV. So the point that I'm making is everybody is different, but come up with a compromise, because leaving it up in the air is more likely going to make it come back and resurface rather than if you just address it and get it over with. If you could think of other things that I left out, like, of course there's probably other things, but the basic rules, like when a therapist is having family sessions and you sit down with multiple people or group or whatever, you want to have ground rules. And those ground rules are respecting each other, everyone speaks at once, one topic at a time, like basic rules. So if you think of anything else, definitely put them down in the comments. If you are in a relationship and you have learned something and you're like, this is very helpful, please share it. I think that we can always learn from each other. And I hope it was helpful. I think next, I'm not really sure what videos I'm going to do next. I'm just trying to keep going with, like, a lot of times it has to do with whatever came up in my sessions. And if I'm noticing a theme, then I'll bring it and make a video, because I'm like, hey, maybe there are other people who also are struggling with this. Not even maybe. Probably most people are struggling with this, because we're all human and we have difficulties in relationships and nobody's perfect. So anyways, I hope it was helpful, and then I'll see you in the next video, whatever topic it may be. All right, thank you.